He's the hired help.
He's the mayor's personal representative to the archives division.
He retired. He recorded alumni of GSD several Saturdays ago that I invited the students to go to, and then because he's behind this project, we
There you got it.
we hope.
All right, just
Check
turn on,
it
you're all
out to make
set.
sure. All right, Lauren. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Okay, this
That's
is
it,
Bill.
12.
This is Bill Davis, and this is Wilma Davis. And Bill has lived in Cave Spring most of his life, and he's a retired mail carrier, and he flew 33 bombing missions in B-17 in World War II. And they live on Davis Mountain, and Wilma was born in Alabama, and she's lived in Cave Spring for about 30 years, and she taught 3 years in Cave Spring. She taught first grade, and she's a retired GSD teacher. What do you like about Cave Spring?
First, what do I like about Cave Spring? I love that fresh mountain air, and I love that fresh water that makes you feel so good and tastes the best. Won the first prize, didn't it? And I like the friendliness of the people, and I like the freedom, like free spirit that we have here. We don't feel afraid that somebody's going to come and take away what we have. And I like the church's religious atmosphere, and I love just about everything about Cave Springs.
Well, I like the low crime rate, and, beautiful scenery, and people.
What was Cave Spring like when you were young?
What would you say?
What was Cave Spring like when you were young?
I remember when
Same answer that.
hot water from the cave was around, and had no electric pumps.
When I first came to Cave Springs, it was already a progressive school, and it had a high school. And I taught first grade 3 years here, from 1959 until about 62. And I liked the part that we had a high school. And I liked the part because my daughter said that when she went to school here, that she never felt afraid, that she was thankful she went to a school where she felt safe.
Okay. What did you do for fun at my age?
Well, we had a wheelbarrow wagon, and had a steep hill behind the house. We used to get up on that and going about 60 miles an hour when we hit the bottom of the big ditch. It was fun when we missed the ditch. And then,
When I came to Cave Springs, I was a married lady. And what did I do for fun? Oh, man. I guess play with the children.
What did you do for fun back at your house in
At my
Alabama?
house when I was growing up. Well, I grew up in a family of 12. I had 7 brothers, and my favorite thing to do was climb trees. But I could never get down out of the tree. So I guess my favorite thing was begging my brother to get me down. And we had a lot of fun. Little girls would make a little playhouse by getting little rocks and, making the little petition, and your toys were mostly imaginary. You might get a broomstick to be your little horse and gallop around on that, and you might pick some kind of bean and break it up that wasn't really a bean and put it in your little clay pots and pans and cook it. And the neighborhood was one big playground. Everybody that lived in your neighborhood played together. And when we went swimming, we didn't have bathing suits like the lady told us before us, but we When I grew up, I went swimming in the creek. So what we did was tear off our clothes or pin up our skirts, or we had our own homemade bathing suits. And we would run and jump in the creek, and sometimes you'd have a vine you could hold to, and you could turn that vine loose and jump over into the water. Can you picture me doing that?
I can.
But it was lots of fun.
We had a lot of fun, corn cob battles and shooting rubber guns, and my dad bought us a goat and had a lot of fun trying to hitch him up to the wagon.
What kind of chores did you have at home at my age?
To play with.
What
Homemade
kind of
Chores, it had to
Chores.
be chores.
Let me see. My biggest chore was that I had to draw about, you know what? I don't know what word you use to get the water out of the well, but we call it draw it up. About 6 buckets of water every afternoon poured into the reservoir on our wood stove. And if I didn't do that, I might get a spanking. So I really did it. And then while my sisters and brothers were doing their chores, which was milking the cows, gathering the eggs, and so forth and so on, I had to warm up our leftovers from dinner. That was what we had for supper. And if we didn't have that, sometimes we had a gallon jug of milk and buttermilk and cornbread. And put cornbread in a bowl, crumble it up, pour your buttermilk over that. Good eatings. Try it sometime.
My chores was, my twin brother and I had to milk 6 cows every morning before we came to school, and then had to repeat that in the afternoon. We had to get in enough stove wood to go in the wood stove for cooking.
How was your home life different from kids in the 90s?
That was quite different because we had to work most of the daylight hours. Once in a while we get a break.
The home life long ago was that you did not have electricity, and you had to get around the kitchen table with a lamplight and get up your lessons. And of course, being in a big family, the whole table had boys and girls around it. And I remember having a sister in the 10th grade when I was in the 1st grade. And I learned to read out of the 10th grade book. And that was getting education from home. And every night before we went to bed, Mama read a chapter out of the Bible. And that was getting religious training. And nowadays, everything is fast and push buttons. And it's just differently. So if you're not fast, you don't keep up with the world today.
What did you have for transportation?
Feet. To do most of it walking. When I went to Sunday school and church on Sunday, I had to walk when I was very little. And then a little later, I think we had what they called A model or P model cars. And it had a rumble seat. What's a rumble seat? Anybody know? You know. Well, anyway, it was a little, cars were small and they had a little open seat on the back. And you could sit back there and that was your transportation. But I also remember the wagon with the horses that would pull the wagon. And that was lots of fun. But mostly it was walking.
Well, I had to walk 2 miles up Big Cedar Creek, and I caught the bus at Big Cedar Creek Bridge between here and Rome. We had a A-model Ford, 1931 A-model Ford. We used that to take corn to the mill, make meal over the grist mill right behind Barry's house where the old freezer locker is. One morning, my brother had just learned to drive, and we were coming down Davis Mountain. He hit a rut in the road and ran off that kudzu mountain, and a stump caught the car, kept going on down to the bottom of the ravine. So we had some excitement during those days.
Do you remember how much gasoline cost?
How can I remember? I just have to guess.
15 cents a gallon.
Whoa, I don't know that one. I know kerosene was about 5 cents a gallon.
And what did you use the kerosene for? What did you use the
Kerosene
kerosene?
lamps and
Because you didn't have electric lights.
some people had a,
2 kerosene lamps around.
some people had a kerosene stove.
We mostly just kerosene lamps, you know.
What was school like back then?
Well, I got a good introduction to economics when I was in the first grade. We had a big Rhode Island red hen that cackled right under my room every day right before lunchtime. I raised my hand to be excused, run down and crawl on the schoolhouse and get that egg. And lunchtime I'd take it down to the store and two packs of blow gum for one egg. The egg was worth 1 cent. And that made my day. My brother and I would race to see which one would get that egg first. My twin brother.
This was under the schoolhouse?
Floyd Springs, Georgia.
Y'all have to visit that school. I remember the rolling peddler. That was a truck. I'm not sure how to describe it. But anyway, it was someone that drove up. Somebody help me.
Open panel truck with all the kind of stuff you could get.
Well, we called it the rolling peddler. And they had a little bit of everything in there. You could trade your eggs for food or clothing or anything like that. You really didn't have money. You traded your eggs. So I kind of copied him. I'd wait for the old hen to lay. And while that egg was still fresh and warm in my hand, I'd run up in that truck, give that warm egg to that man, and he would give me I think it was called Mary Jane candy. That was my favorite candy.
I remember distinctly when you change schools, you usually sometime run into some problems. And my brother and I were twins, and when we moved to Cave Spring in the 5th grade, we immediately run into trouble. All the bullies started picking on us because we were twins and a new school. And I asked my dad what we need to do. They won't start a fight. Won't start a fight at recess and dinner. And we dreaded for the bell to ring because we knew what was coming. He said, "Let's knock one of them over and see if that don't happen." So next day at recess, they started their usual picking, and I just drew back and hit one side of the face. They took us both to the office, and the principal said, "Bill, I know you wasn't right, but I got to whip both of us for fighting." And that ended it. After that, we became good friends.
What was your first job?
My first job was when I was about 21 years old, and I started teaching first grade in a school called Alto Park. And then later, I taught school at that school 3 years, and I had first grade again. So I had 6 years training and teaching in first grade for 6 years, and then this is the town known for the deaf school. And probably all of you children know sometimes, like I live, and mom and daddy and home, something like that. So I got into the deaf work, and I had no training, so I had 25 years teaching there, but every year I was there. Most of the time I was taking classes, workshops, and something to improve my communication skills with the deaf children. And I think that that is one thing that we should be proud of, to be called the home of the deaf school.
My first job after I graduated from University of Georgia, a degree in vocational education, was teaching the veterans class at Jackson, Georgia.
How much did it pay?
Pay $200 a month, $2,400 a year.
I know it was under $200, and would you like to know what I bought with my first check? A wristwatch, so I could tell what time of day it was, and a suitcase. And I guess I wanted to travel, but the check was less than $200. I would guess about $180. That was big money, wasn't it?
How would you make improvements, if any, when you make a case spring?
Well, I'd make a bypass road around it so the tractor trailer won't have to come through the middle of town. That'd be my first improvement.
I think I would work on the education part, trying to get our school to grow a little bit, at least to have 3 more grades added.
Where is your favorite place?
You mean city or town or what do you?
Like, where is your favorite place in Cave Spring?
Oh,
Spring
Cave
and
Spring.
Cave,
Why?
because it's cool and relaxing.
Well, why did he have to say that? Because that's what I was going to say. And when I was first brought to Cave Springs, I was cured at spring, and it was the day before I was going to get married. 4th of July. And what are you doing on 4th of July? Everybody cuts a watermelon. So we take the watermelon and we put it in the spring. And I was still living in Rome. And I remember that was my welcome to Cave Springs. If you asked to put a watermelon in the spring, let it cool, go into the swimming pool and play around a little, and eat that juicy watermelon. If you just want to pick out the heart and eat it with your hand, well, that's fine. And let juice run all the way down. And that's my favorite place is the spring.
What is your most memorable moment?
Most memorable. About what? About Cave Springs? About what?
About anything, I guess.
Well, my most memorable moment was I had to fly 33 missions in World War II and based in Italy, bombing Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. And my brother was shot down on a bombing mission to Vienna, Austria. We was flying in the same formation. And we got a direct hit, number 2 engine that caught fire. And he was bailed out and was taken prisoner. And I continued to fly. It was on our 11th mission. He was shot down on February the 14th, 1945. I continued to fly and flew 33 missions before the war ended. All of those missions were in a B-17 bomber, which is known as the Flying Fortress. And I had to fly back home in a B-24, which was known as the Flying Boxcar. And I counted that as my 34th mission. So I really sweated that mission out. We landed in the Azores, refueled, and then went up to Goose Bay, Labrador. And from there we flew down to Bradley Field, Connecticut. And when we landed, I debarked from the plane and kissed the ground. That was my most memorable moment.
I think mine was the birth of my, can I have two?
Yeah.
2 children. My first child was a little girl, and then about a year later I had a little boy. So I believe when I opened my eyes and looked into the little babies' faces, that was my most oh, whatever you call it, say it.
Memorable moment.
Moments.
What did you say you flew back on?
B-24,
B-24?
Learning box car. Biscuits.
Flying
No.
bread.
Not that easy. How old were you when you were in the war?
I was 19.
19. You were a very young man to be doing something that scary and dangerous.
Yeah, it was quite a trip.
Did you know when your twin was shot down? Were you aware
No,
of
I heard he heard from me about every day because the other planes being shot down in my squadron.
Uh-huh.
They tell him how I was doing, but I didn't hear from him till after the war ended, and my brother sent a telegram. Red Cross notified my family that Patton's Third Army liberated him.
When he was a prisoner of war? They liberated him?
Prison camp,
Uh-huh.
and they notified my parents that he'd been liberated. My brother sent me a telegram.
That is so incredible. Your war experiences.
Yeah, I hope you don't never have to go through any of that to fight for this freedom that we take for granted.
This is, did you and your brother ever switch places or something?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun when we were dating. When we were in college, we fixed this old carriage up and rented a horse and drove around over the campus. And we dated twins from the coordinate campus, freshmen. And we thought we'd have a little fun with switch, see if they could tell us apart. It made them so mad they didn't want to have anything else to do with us.
They ever switched on you?
No, they never did.
As far as you know.
Rachel, what do you want?
Tell about the time you stuck your head through a wagon wheel. Grandma.
Got caught in a wagon wheel.
Rachel, you embarrassed me. The most dangerous thing I ever did was one time my uncle stopped the wagon and the two mules were supposed to be still while my uncle and my daddy had a little conversation. And I was a little girl, just remembering enough to remember. And so while they were there, the wagon wheel had spokes. And I was sticking my head in one spoke, taking it out, sticking my head in another spoke, taking it out, going all around the wheel. And the two mules gave a jump and jerked the wagon, and my daddy grabbed me in time to save me from having my head go round and round. And he gave me about 25 hard licks and put me on the ground and said, "Don't you ever do that again."
When I was 6 years old, my father was planning to take a trip. And we had a T-model Ford convertible parked in the garage. It was raining a lot, it was real muddy. And we ran fast as we could. We were gonna climb up on that car. When he backed out of the garage and he didn't see us. So I slipped and fell and my head went right under the back wheel. And the mud just slid right off the side of my head when he backed out of the garage. And that was a close call. And I remember most my mother filling up a wash tub with water and trying to wash the mud out of my hair.
So he has muddy water in his head.
So be careful when you're backing out of the garage with a car.
I would say that mud might have saved your life.
Yeah,
That
that's
might
true.
save his life.
Rachel?
Tell how they told you and Uncle Bob apart at school.
Well, Miss Martha said she could tell us because Billy parted his hair on the left and Bobby parted his on the right.
But you know what? I feel disappointed. No one asked me how I knew which twin I married.
How did you know which twin you married?
Well, she don't. When we were real young, my mother had this black girl, 16-year-old girl, taking care of us. She was bouncing on a bed, and I had a blue ribbon my hair and Bob had a white one in his, and those ribbons lost off, and we don't know to this day which one's which.
I don't believe that, do you? Well, his niece introduced us, and she introduced us as Bill. So I guess
So that's what you assume.
I
he is.
trust. I trust.
Talking about Margene.
Well, I think Rachel has one more question.
Rachel, your questions at home.
How did y'all meet?
Well, we met on blind date. My sister, Vivian Morgan, said, I'll get you a date with my roommate if you get me a date with Wayne Jones. He was a druggist down in Cave Springs at that time. We were good friends. I said, okay. So, Vivian couldn't go, so she got Joyce Jarvis, her girlfriend, to go in her place. And Wayne says, which one you gonna take? I said, well, I'll take the little one. You taller than I am, you take Joyce. And I'll take Wilma. So that's how it started.
I thought you told me you flipped the coin.
I don't know how.
Thank you.